Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're on another We Need Help to Wednesday. Today, we're going to be talking about replacement behaviors. We'll do some quick check-ins, a couple slides about what the ABCs of behavior are, finding the right replacement behavior, and then how to execute that. So, and essentially, what we've got is you might be struggling with a problem behavior, and when the child engages in the problem behavior, they get a reward from it. They get something out of doing that behavior. So we want to change that to where instead of engaging in the problem behavior and getting that reward, we engage in a replacement behavior and get a similar reward or as close to the same reward as we possibly can so that the problem behavior will eventually fade out. Challenge and contacting me. So check-ins. Some good news is we got a load of gravel delivered for landscaping, so my back is sure to be sore over the weekend. I am just really excited that Star Wars is streaming early. I haven't seen the new one yet, so I'm glad that it's coming out sooner rather than later. And a random fact related to today's screencast is most people misinterpret the experiment with Pavlov and his dog with the ring a bell and the dog salivates. Most people think that that means that when he rang the bell, the dog would get hungry. That's not really the true nature of it. He was engaged in something called classical conditioning as opposed to operant conditioning. When people think about behavior and sort of modifying someone's behavior, modifying your own behavior, that's primarily all operant behavior. Classical behavior is when you have something that's unconditioned, something that happens without any control. But that's a little bit of a soapbox nerd random fact. Quick refresh on the ABCs. B again stands for the behavior, what you can directly observe, and an objective definition of that. So trying to keep intention and motivation and anything that you can't really know for sure out of it. The antecedents are setting events, triggers, or signals that come before the behavior, and the consequences, what the child gets out of completing the behavior. Again, not what you do because the child engaged in the behavior, but what the child gets. And there are two major functions. The first is to gain access to a preferred item, a preferred activity, or even a preferred person's attention. The second main one is to escape or avoid a non-preferred activity or person. So to find the right replacement behavior, we need to remember that no behavior occurs in a vacuum. There's some reason that this behavior is happening, some function that it fulfills. And I don't know if you guys have ever tried this, but telling someone to stop or telling someone to knock it off, it's not going to meet that function. It's not going to end up working. That means it's not going to stop or change that behavior. Um, Common example that I throw out when I'm doing safety care training is you never tell someone to calm down because in no situation in history has that ever worked. No one's like, oh, you're right. Yeah, I should just calm down. There's some function of the behavior that we need to try to match in order to redirect instead of just stopping it cold. So like I just said, one serves the same function. We're not going to be successful with the replacement behavior if it's too hard to do, or if it's aversive or unpleasant, or if it isn't worth not engaging in the behavior in the first place. So this is a pretty tricky task, but it's the best way to go about meaningful behavioral change. So it's got to be something that's relatively easy, something that people can do naturally, and something that's not something that they're going to hate to do. This is why one of my favorite replacement behaviors is taking deep breaths. It's because everyone knows how to do it and everyone needs to do it and everyone will do it eventually. So it's not just natural and easy, but it's also a guaranteed way to get up some behavioral momentum. Because if I'm telling you to take some breaths, you're going to eventually take breaths. And I can build on that and try to increase the compliance with that as we go. So some incompatible behaviors. This is the best replacement behaviors are incompatible, meaning that you can't do one and the other at the same time. Um, the there's It's really hard to find a perfect match, one that's going to be completely incompatible. But the closer the approximation, the better. And these are all more suited for working on behavioral excesses, things that the child or the student is actually doing, as opposed to things that the child or student is not doing. So, talking out in class, it's easier to come up with a replacement behavior for talking out in class than it is to not paying attention. The behaviors that we can see, the behaviors we observe, it's easier to change those ones than the ones that the student isn't doing. Down at the bottom, just some examples of certain problem behaviors and incompatible behaviors for those. So, screaming or yelling, you could have whispering or humming the ABCs or taking deep breaths. Sitting or slapping, marshmallow hands, soft hands, hands in pockets. Right now, Hadley really likes to grab Kingsley, our dog, a little bit more aggressively than we're okay with. And so instead of just saying no or stop or you can't do that, we're trying to teach her how to have soft hands where she goes and actually gives him pets. Running, incompatible to those would be crawling or crab walking or strutting. Strutting's kind of a fun one. Teach someone how to strut and reinforce that. If they're tapping or doing some irritating repetitive behavior, having them hold something heavy or hold something that's really, really quiet. For one of the students, when we were back in schools, I had them try to keep a glass of, not a glass, it was a bottle, had a lid, a bottle of water at a certain level. So I drew a line around the middle of the water bottle, and I had them try to keep it level so that they wouldn't engage in some repetitive stimulatory behaviors. So, extinction, execution, and attention. The There's a phenomenon in behavior where when we're trying to eliminate a behavior, it often goes through an extinction burst. What this means is we can sort of train the behavior out for a little while, and then all of a sudden the student or child thinks, I really want to engage in that behavior again, and we see a huge spike. Um, this doesn't mean that what we're doing is wrong. This doesn't mean that it's not working. This actually means that it is working, and the student just is starting to catch on and say, "Oh, wait, I forgot. I used to engage in this behavior, and I used to get this reinforcement from it." So, if you see that big spike, that extinction burst, don't give up. It means it is working. To execute replacement behaviors, you really need to reward or incentivize or reinforce what you want the student to do instead. This needs to be over the top. If it's not, then it's just not going to work. Um, we have to make sure that whatever the replacement behavior is more appealing than the problem behavior was in the first place. If we don't do that, we're just sort of spinning our wheels. And one more of my soapboxes: your attention is the most valuable investment you can make. The things that you give attention to are going to grow. The things that you withhold your attention from are going to wither out. The more attention a behavior gets, the more reinforcing it's going to be. In the majority, 95 to 99% of the cases. There is an exception. Some kids with oppositional defiant disorder will not really worry about what you do with your attention. In some cases, if you start to give a lot of attention to the replacement behavior, they'll pick up on that and say, "Oh no, I don't actually like your attention. So I'm going to do the opposite. And if you try to withhold your attention, then I don't really care about that either." So ODD can be a really tough population to work with. And if you're working with that, please let me know. I'm happy to help brainstorm some other ways that we can work with those kids. But in the majority of the cases, give some attention to the behaviors that you want to see, and withhold your attention for the negative behaviors. We don't use the word ignore, at least not in the educational setting. It can be tempting to do that, but we never ignore kids. What we do is we withhold that attention on purpose. So it's just sort of a different way to say it, I guess, but it seems a little bit more politically correct to say I'm withholding my attention than I'm just ignoring a child. So my challenge for you guys today is, before unleashing these on your kids, try them on yourself. Identify a behavior that you would like to change about you, and try to think of a replacement behavior. Let's see, thinking of an example. Um, oh, here's one. I tend to clear my throat a lot. And with both Kayla and I working from home now, it's something that is being brought to the forefront of my attention. So I'm going to try to start to first notice when I engage in the behavior and then think of a replacement behavior. For me, that's probably going to be getting a drink of water because I don't think I can clear my throat and drink water at the same time. And if you start noticing a buildup or wanting to take a cheat day, that's okay. That's the extinction burst that we talked about. And if you're finding it hard to switch and engage in that replacement behavior, even being the wise, experienced people that you are with a desire to change, think about what that means for our kids when we're trying to get them to engage in a replacement behavior. If it's hard for us and we're able to take a different perspective and know that this is the right thing to do, imagine that for a child whose brain doesn't work anywhere near what ours does. A very different way of thinking about it. So hopefully build some compassion and empathy and know that it's not always easy to change a behavior. Last up, best ways to contact me. Hope to hear from you guys soon. Take care.